I will always be straight about the challenges that we face and the choices that we must make. And to be clear, we won't transform our economy easily or in a few months. It will take some sacrifices, and it will take some time.
Prime Minister Mark Carney this week with a pre-budget speech aimed at shedding light on the government's economic plan. There's just a little over a week to go until the Liberals table their highly anticipated budget, but without a majority government, they have to court votes from the opposition to get it passed. And the opposition parties are coming to the table with very specific demands.
It's their responsibility and only theirs to find somebody to vote with them. They know our conditions, and if they wake up a little bit late, it's once again their problem.
If he takes my suggestions of bringing down the deficit to the level the Liberal government promised, of getting rid of the hidden taxes on food, well, then let's have a look at it.
We're looking for a budget that helps working families. It's got to create jobs. It has to create affordable housing. It has to support and protect health care. We will not support an austerity approach.
The Scrum is here to look ahead to that budget. Stephanie Levitz is a senior reporter for the Globe and Mail. Chris Hall is a longtime parliamentary journalist, and Graham Richardson is a managing director at Edelman Public Affairs. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Very happy to see all of you and all of you here together. Steph, I'll start with you because I heard you up on the Hill questioning all these opposition leaders as they went to meet with the Prime Minister. Do you think the prospect of support for this budget from the opposition parties exists, and if so, where?
I don't think it exists with the opposition Conservatives. I mean, full stop. Like, history will tell us that the official opposition party in the House of Commons will not support the government's budget. It would take extraordinary circumstances for that. So let's put them aside. So then you've got to look to the Bloc Québécois and the New Democrats. The Bloc Québécois, you know, are saying that they don't think that their demands are going to be met. That might be true. It might be posturing. There might be ways for Mr. Carney to meet their demands elsewhere around the budget, if not in the budget legislation. Other things the Bloc Québécois have been looking for, different pieces of legislation. Then you need to go to the New Democrats. And this is the one I think is probably the most politically interesting, right? Because you have this tiny little rump of a caucus that not just a year ago had decided they were going to break with their marriage with the Trudeau Liberals, and they had seen the prop up this minority government. They got things in exchange for that, but politically it proved fatal in the end. So what do they do now? Could they potentially be responsible for calling an election? Could the government fall? Are there other... This might be one of those neat times where all the parliamentary historians are going through and being like, what are other ways that a minority budget could, survive, a minority government could survive? So I think there's not on the demands, but perhaps on some of the jockeying and horse trading, there might be room for this to get passed.
You've seen a lot of minority budgets go through, Chris. Like, what when you look at this one, in contrast to those, what pops out at you as the jockeying that might occur?
Well, first of all, who doesn't love a game of parliamentary chicken, right? Yeah. When there's a minority government, and that's what's happening here. I tend to agree with Steph that clearly the NDP has to negotiate here. They're a very small party. They don't really have a leader yet. Don Davies, I watched him with you earlier this week. No specific list of demands as interim leader. So I think they have to make some kind of deal. And look, what he talked about was making things better for working families. Carney will say, check, I've got some things in the hopper to do that. Help to make sure that housing prices and the like are more affordable, also check. The difficulty, as you know, Vashi, is that none of this stuff's happening tomorrow, and that's where the crisis hits right now. So we'll see ultimately whether they have something or enough of something to keep the NDP on board saying, yes, we believe that we're on the right track to help working class families and to protect jobs.
Yeah, it feels like, given all the communication from various parties in advance of this, Graham, that the NDP would be, as Chris points out, like the natural dance partner, only because they've been the least specific about what they anticipate, and in general terms have stipulated they just want to see investment. And what do we hear from the Prime Minister quite frequently over the last 10 days? This will be a budget of generational investment.
And I'm going to state the obvious and the simple. Who wants to take the blame for going to an early election? Our economy is being threatened. Auto jobs are going south, thousands of them. It's just, like, Mr. Carney at a time won the election based on being the adult in the room and putting aside, although you can't put aside partisan politics when you're a prime minister, he's a partisan politician. But little things like not delaying Mr. Poilievre's by-election. No games. I'm just going to get him into the House, right? So are you going to, like, if a party actually brings down the government on this, I do think there'll be a price to pay, because the fatigue level with the public and the fear level with the public with what's happening right now, I don't think they'll tolerate this. Like, I'll be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. I mean, this all the marbles. This is for power. So anything can happen. I just can't imagine someone sitting there saying, "Yeah, let's take them down."
Well, that was an interesting pivot this week as well, though, because at the start of the week, you had Government House Leader Steve McKinnon intimating that if that were to happen, it would be the opposition's fault, and if there's an election, then so be it. He acknowledged Canadians don't want one. A day later, he was getting follow-up questions from reporters, and he was really downplaying the possibility of anything like that happening. And lo and behold, 2 meetings with Pierre Poilievre and Yves-François Blanchet were scheduled and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. Sometimes you have to wonder with Mr. Carney, and all due respect to the Prime Minister, where does Parliament fit in his worldview of how he's going to run this country? And by which I mean reaching out across the aisle, talking to the opposition leaders. I understand that it is Steve McKinnon's job, Leader of the Government in the House of Commons, to do some of that brokerage, but Mr. Carney does have to get the other party leaders, if not on side, at least talking to each other. That's part of a minority parliament. And sometimes one gets the sense that the business of Parliament is not something he's interested in at all. And when the signaling is coming out saying, well, we could go to an election, you can almost say Canadians thinking, okay, but did you try, though? Right. Like, did you even try talking to the other guys? It might amount to nothing. This is all political theater. A lot of this is political theater ultimately, but you do have to try, and you do have to accept, okay, this is a minority parliament, and I may as well sit down with the other guys if I'm going to be the leader I said I was going to be and just see. But then Mr. Carney came out and didn't seem like he was interested in any of the proposals they may have put on the table.
It cuts both ways, to my point. Like, I agree with Stephanie that, like, Mr. Carney could wear this as well. You can't get a deal. Like, we just had an election. Get a deal, right?
Do you have the sense at all that, I sometimes feel like I'm still covering a majority parliament. I know I'm very keenly aware, Chris, that I'm not, but to Steph's point, it feels like they govern in that way at times, and the budget is a big test of that. Like, it's hard to get away with it when you're not a majority.
Well, especially since it's this late, right?
Yeah.
We're in November and we haven't seen a budget. Obviously, there was an election in the spring. I think there's a lot riding on this for Mr. Carney, in the sense that he isn't political. He is different almost from any other Prime Minister we have seen thus far. He's used to being the head of a Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. He's used to being a board chairman. He doesn't need to negotiate in public or in private. I think that's how he approaches things. So if we listen to what he's been saying, this is a pivot point, that we're in a time of huge disruption. He's got lots of prescriptions for what we face, but he doesn't have the description of how he's going to make things better for folks. And the only way he's going to do that is by talking publicly. That's why I think he was out on Wednesday, and by working with the opposition party, say, what is it you need? What can I give you in return for your support this time around?
And what do you glean so far from what he said and what people around his delegates have said, Graham, as their view of what this budget should do? Because I hear a lot of different messages.
Yeah, like in my current role as communications person, like, what's the line? Like, what's the story? I think they're still trying to land it, which maybe is not a natural this far out, but I do know, like, we are getting close to what the narrative is going to be. I think they run the risk of playing up the wartime sort of. We've heard a lot of that, and what I think, my general sense, what Canadians are looking for is the tangibles, right? Like something they can hang their hat on that's going to turn the page or push things forward in a way that's positive for the country. And my general sense, I'm not in there, but my general sense is that the challenges they're facing are so large with the unpredictability in the White House that they're somewhat restrained in being able to map that out. And maybe some of that is that sort of confusing message you're seeing. Is this going to be a one-line budget? This is what it's about? I think the country needs that. I don't know if they can deliver that given the circumstances.
I think also the interesting sort of, like, they've been able to distill two separate narratives, but try to convey that both can be the case. Grand scale investment in order to meet that moment that Graham described, but also restraint and sacrifice. And that part has not really fully been defined. What do you anticipate on that front, Steph?
I'm really interested in seeing that part, right? What sacrifice and how sacrifice is defined, shall we say, in the budget. I mean, budgets are notorious for, they'll list that things have been cut or spending has been reduced, but they never explain what. And that what comes a lot later. And I do think, I think public opinion surveys show it, that the Canadian public has an appetite for reduced level of government spending, maybe a little bit of the government backing off from a sense that it's involved in so many things in everybody's day-to-day life. But when those changes hurt them, I mean, you can even take Canada Post as just like a small fraction of an example, right? For the folks who were not getting mail delivery at home anymore, the fact that it is now ending, well, whatever. For the folks that were still getting it at home, like, but I like my mail delivery at home, and now I'm mad that the government has taken that away, even though I understand they need to save money. So it all comes down to how people are left feeling at the end of the day. And one of Mr. Carney's challenges, I think, is on that feelings space, because it's also, people can hear him articulate, we need to do big things, we need to, I could recite all the talking points. But when you get home at the end of the day and you have opened your refrigerator and your meat prices have tripled and your kid is still living in the basement and the reality of your life is sinking in, it's nice to think, oh, in 10 years this world might be better, but what about my right now?
Chris?
Yeah, I totally agree. This is a real problem for the Prime Minister. He talks about generational change. He talks about how important this moment is, but nothing he's promising is immediate. So if you're looking as an average person who's renting a house and wants to invest in a new home, you still have to pay the mortgage, just like we still have to pay for all those capital investments that he's talking about. So to the point that we're trying to get at, is there a narrative here? There hasn't really been one that's sunk through. He needs to actually communicate in a way people understand it and shows that he has some both empathy and understanding of the kinds of challenges they face.
Last word to you, Graham.
Well, a couple of things. We're all agreeing with each other. It's so polite up here. The tangible piece, I think, is really important. The other thing to keep in mind, Vashi, too, is implementation side. The government, the apparatus of government, the deputies in place now have never done this before, a cuts exercise. The current ones, generally speaking, there's very few left, if any left at the deputy level from the Harper years, where they did these exercises. So this is all new, no matter what they implement, which will be tremendously disruptive for the public service, depending on how far they go. Mr. Carney keeps talking about, you know, the division in the budget that the public doesn't really get. I think once budget lands, they'll understand it because the numbers will be there.
Okay, I got to leave it on that note. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Graham Richardson, Chris Hall, and Stephanie Levitz coming up on Question Period. The 3 things I'll be watching for next week. Stay right there.